Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to explore a deeply powerful parable about why hard work alone just isn't always enough to succeed. Listen, have you ever felt like you're putting in the hours, making the plans, and genuinely trying your absolute hardest, yet somehow you just aren't getting ahead? Today, we're looking at a story that completely reframes how we think about success, failure, and the quiet, hidden things that hold us back. We're going to break down the mechanics of what is essentially quietly stealing your life, and more importantly, how you can fix it.
Okay, let's dive right into this common struggle by introducing Michael. Michael is 34 years old, living in a small town, and everyone who knows him thinks of him as a really hard worker. He wakes up early every single morning, grinds all day at his job, and comes home absolutely exhausted. But every month, he sits down at his kitchen table, looks at his life, and wonders, why am I still struggling? You know, he isn't lazy. He certainly isn't careless, but he's working tirelessly and just remaining painfully stuck.
$23. Think about that number for a second. This represents Michael's entire bank account balance. It's a heavy, crushing reality sitting right there next to a stack of growing credit card bills and unpaid debts. Can you imagine the weight of that? Waking up and working hard every single day, yet having literally almost nothing to show for it.
Despite genuinely wanting a better life, a nice house, a little less stress, a bit more freedom, Michael's dreams felt entirely out of reach. He'd just rub his face in frustration and whisper, "Why does it feel like I'm going nowhere?" He was doing everything society told him to do, hitting all the usual marks, yet real success always seemed to remain just one step out of his grasp.
Part 1. The Grandfather and the Bucket. Looking for answers and desperate for some kind of perspective, Michael decided to visit his grandfather, Henry. Now, Henry is an 80-year-old man, wise, calm, and the kind of person who rarely speaks but always seems to know exactly what to say. Sitting at the kitchen table, Michael just poured his heart out, explaining his money problems, his intense stress, and his deep frustration.
Henry just listened quietly to Michael's struggles. Then he simply smiled and said, "Come with me." He silently led Michael out behind the house to an old water well. Sitting right beside the well were two buckets. One looked brand new, and the other looked incredibly old, beat up, and worn out. Without saying much, Henry picked up the old, worn bucket, handed it to Michael, and told him to fill it up. Michael was kind of confused, obviously, but he lowered the bucket into the well. He filled it right to the top, but as he carried it back, half the water just disappeared. The bucket had these tiny holes in the bottom. No matter how many trips Michael made, the water steadily, constantly dripped out. Again and again he filled it, and again it leaked, leaving him completely frustrated. He finally threw his hands up, telling his grandfather that the whole exercise was pointless. When Michael complained that the bucket leaked, Henry looked him dead in the eyes and said, "Your life is that bucket." His grandfather explained that most people think they're failing because they have these massive, insurmountable problems holding them down. But usually, their biggest problems are actually small, ignored holes that they carry around with them every single day. Part 2, 6 holes draining your life. Let's actually break down the exact tiny holes Henry pointed out, the ones that were silently, drop by drop, draining Michael's life away without him even realizing it. Henry started listing them off. Buying things you don't really need. That's a little hole. Spending hours mindlessly scrolling on social media. Another hole. Staying up too late, skipping exercise, procrastinating on important work, and constantly telling yourself you'll start tomorrow. Now, individually, buying a coffee or skipping a single workout seems completely harmless, right? But together, as a collective system, these 6 habits are quietly stealing years of his life, thousands of dollars, and endless opportunities. Michael felt pure shock when he went home that night and decided to honestly track his habits for the very first time. He realized he was losing over 3 hours every single day just scrolling on his phone. 3 hours. When you visualize that against the rest of his waking day, the magnitude of that one single tiny hole becomes absolutely staggering. The next morning, sitting in his car before work, the full weight of this realization brought Michael to tears. But it wasn't because life was unfair. It was because his mindset shifted entirely. He realized he wasn't a victim of circumstance. He wasn't trapped by the world. He was leaking. And recognizing your own leaks is the very first and most powerful step toward actually fixing them.
Part 3, Step-by-Step Habit Redemption. So how do we actually fix a leaky life? Well, instead of trying to change everything at once, panicking and burning out, which is, let's face it, what most of us do, Michael systematically started fixing just one hole at a time.
This brilliantly illustrates the compounding power of time. In month 1, he fixed just one leak. He stopped buying unneeded things. In month 2, he set strict limits on his social media use. Month 3, he started waking up early to exercise. By month 6, he finally had a real budget. Notice how slow and deliberate this is. By year 5, those small, month-by-month habit changes eventually allowed him to buy his first home and completely pay off his debt. Small victories lead to monumental shifts.
Fast forward, and Michael had built a life he once thought was completely impossible. When people asked how his savings grew so much, how his stress vanished, and how opportunities suddenly started appearing out of nowhere, he didn't credit some stroke of magic luck. His answer was incredibly simple. I fixed the holes. He knew everything changed because his bucket finally stopped leaking.
Part 4. Fixing your own leaks. Let's move to the moral of the story and see how this builds a framework you can apply to your own daily routines right now. Because Michael's story isn't just a parable, it is a blueprint.
Here is the harsh truth. Bad habits don't destroy your life overnight. They do it slowly, so slowly that you hardly even notice it's happening. People don't usually fail because they lack talent or intelligence. They fail because a few dollars here, an hour there, one excuse today and one delay tomorrow quietly and slowly drain their potential until years have simply passed them by. A leaking bucket drains your energy, your money, your time, and your focus. But a full bucket, that results in savings, health, confidence, and new opportunities. The incredible takeaway here is that success isn't always about doing more or hustling harder. Remember, Michael was already working as hard as he physically could. Sometimes true success is simply about leaking less and fiercely protecting the resources, the time, and the energy you already have. I want to leave you with this final thought and question to reflect on. What is one small habit that is leaking success out of your life right now? Be honest with yourself. Drop a comment below and let me know what that one habit is for you. Find that one hole this week and plug it. Because remember, a bucket doesn't empty all at once. It empties one tiny drop at a time. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and be sure to subscribe for episode 3. Take 5 minutes today to find your leaks.